Good afternoon, guys. Good morning or good night, depending on the time that you're watching this video. This video is just here to make sure that you understand and you reinforce the topic that we saw in the last class, that is modal verbs. As we mentioned in the last class, if you remember, modal verbs are a type of auxiliary verb. If you remember, we mentioned that an auxiliary verb is not a verb itself, but it's a word that is used to help other verbs have different meanings. And normally we're going to use modal verbs to talk about these three things: predictions, assumptions, and deductions. Let's take a look at the structure so we know what we are talking about. So, when we are using modal verbs, there are four elements that we are going to include in the affirmative form. Remember, in the affirmative form, you are always going to include the subject, the modal verb, and the verb in the base form, as well as the complement. Let's move on to the subject. When we talk about the subject, you can say about the name of any person you know. You can say a pronoun like he, she, it, we, you, or they. Or you can include the name of a profession, like you see over here, we have the teacher, or you can have the doctor, my classmate, my brother, not a profession or a category, or the name of another person like Daniel, Ludwig, or Leticia. When we talk about the modals, we talk that there are just four modals that we are going to use. There are more, but we're just going to focus on these four. We have must, might, may, and could. Remember that they have a scale that we're going to see later on in the video. So after that, we're going to use the verb in the base form. Remember, the verb in the base form is just any verb you want, but without being in any form. So that means that here the verb is not going to include an S, it's not going to include ed, it's not going to include ing, it's not going to include any of those stuff. Okay, it's just going to be the verb as it is in present. And then the complement can be whatever you want in the sentence. For example, we have Daniel must like that kind of music. We are making an assumption, okay, that he likes certain kind of music. Ludwig might come to the party. We're talking about a 50-50 chance. And Leticia may invite you to come, another 50-50 chance. And finally, the teacher could sell his car. We're talking about a possibility, but it's a lower possibility than the other three sentences. Let's move on to the negative form for modal verbs. And as you see, nothing changes. Just we have the subject, the modal, the verb in the base form, and the complement. But what is the only change? That you're going to add not after the modal verb and before the verb in base form. So you're going to say, Daniel must not like that kind of music. Ludwig may not come to the party. Leticia may not invite you to come, or the teacher could not sell his car. Remember that we are not going to contract the modal verbs with the particle not. So it is incorrect that you say mustn't. In this sense, we cannot say mustn't, but in other sense, that is the imperatives, we can, but we are not dealing with that topic right now. You cannot say mightn't, because mightn't doesn't exist, or mayn't, or couldn't. We're going to use them in different situations, but there are specific uses for that they are not related to this topic. So this is what we need to remember, okay? Negative form, subject, modal verb, or not, verb in base form, complement. Now let's talk about the three situations that we're going to use them for, and the first one is for talking about predictions, okay? What do I mean by a prediction is that you see an event or you see a certain situation that always happens, and based on that event, then you make a prediction of what can happen at that time, okay? So basically you're trying to predict what is going to happen right now based on everything that you see almost every single time. You see that we have must, may, might, and could. When we talk about must, we're talking about 100% certainty that something is possible. That means that we are sure or almost sure that something will happen, okay? So we are sure that our prediction will be true. Like for example, Juan always comes early to class. I was telling you, like for example, Juan always comes at 7 o'clock in the morning to school. Therefore, since you see him every day coming at 7, then you can make a prediction that you are 100% sure or almost 100% sure that he must come early today, because that is something that he always does. Then you have may, that is the formal form, and might, that is the formal form. Remember that may and might, they don't have a difference, just that one. That may is more formal, might is more informal. So if it is a person that I'm talking to the first time, I am going to use may. If it's somebody that I know from a long time, I use might. Then, when we are talking about these two models, we have a 50% chance. So that means that something can happen or something cannot happen. It is a 50-50 possibility. So that means that it can be a yes or it can be a no. We have examples. You can say he might come in time or he may come in time. Okay, here you see that one always comes early to class. That's the situation. But probably today things may change. You don't know. Maybe he is having a problem with his parents and they are not able to go in the car, or probably if he's traveling by bus, there was something happening to the bus and we don't know. So therefore, in this case, you have a 50-50 chance when you are not sure that something is possible or not. And finally, we talk about could. That is a 25% of certainty that something is possible. That means that you think that it's possible, but you are not so sure whatsoever. That means that you have just a little indicative for you to know that it could happen. Like he could be even earlier. Like he could be at the classroom even before 7 a.m. As I mentioned before, he could be there at 6:30 or something like that. But in this case, we are talking that there is just this little possibility from that to happen. Then when we make an assumption, we are going to follow the same things, okay? Must will be 100, may will be 50, could will be 25, and you are going to make the following situation. Laura and Larry are really close. So when I see that they are close, I make an assumption, something that I believe is true about them, but may or may not be true. Notice how I use may over there. May or may not be true. So you have a 50-50 chance. But when you see that they are really close, they are really good friends, they are always together, they eat together, they are everywhere together, you can say that they must be in a relationship because probably based on the evidence that you have and based on what you see, you are sure that they are in a relationship. Or probably you are not so sure. You think that maybe instead of being in a relationship, they are just childhood friends. They know each other since they were little kids and they still have a great relationship to this day. So you can say they may be childhood friends or they might be childhood friends. And finally, could. They could be good friends. So over here, we're talking about a little less possible event that they just are good friends and that's it. There's nothing else that we need to think of. Now let's move on to the last and last use for modal verbs. In this case, we're talking about deductions. A deduction is something that you try to guess. Like imagine that you are a detective and you see a crime scene, and based on what you see, you make a deduction of what happened at that time. Over here, we're making a deduction of what we see, what's happening, or what can we infer from the situation. We have must as well, must 100%, may might 50, could 25. And we can say Joy looks terrible. Maybe Joy comes one day to the class and he looks a lot really tired. He looks really bad. He looks without any emotions or without any, motivation to do something today. And you may say, because you are 100% sure, maybe you talked to Joy yesterday or today in the morning and he told you that he wasn't feeling well. So you say he must be sick. Because you see that he's pale, he's falling asleep, and maybe he's sick. He may or might feel tired. So that means that probably he doesn't have energy. It happens to all of us that one day you have energy, one day you may not have it. So therefore, we have a 50-50 chance. And finally, we are going to have the 25% that something is possible. He could be sad. This is not so possible, but the possibility is there that this may be the case. So with that, we're going to finish the explanation on modal verbs. I hope this video is helpful. Remember to watch it, and any question, let me know and I will be there to gladly answer them. Bye-bye and take care.